So if you want to generate speed like Zeke Lau, let's break down his technique and his approach here as he gears up to do this big old air, all right? So the first thing I want to point out with his approach is the wave as he starts is actually kind of fat, right? So notice how flat this wave is, right? This thing is pretty flat. So the first pump that he does is something called the Huntington hop. It's a little bit of a Huntington hop. And what's going on here is when you're trying to generate speed, there's kind of like 2-3 ways to pump in a way. And when the wave is super fat, you can't really get rail to rail. So what's happening here is he's first applying pressure with that back foot and then lifting up with the front foot. And then he applies front foot pressure, okay? And he just hops up and down. And he only does it once here, but he'll kind of tip tap the board and push on that front foot. And so you'll see guys at the US Open at Huntington Beach where it can be really fat and they'll be hopping really hard on that front foot. And that's what you want to do when the wave is super fat and you can't even go rail to rail. But he only has to do it once because the wave then begins to stand up and get a little steeper, and then he can do a proper pump, okay? And the way to think about these pumps are almost like mini bottom turns, if you will, okay? And so let's break down what that looks like. So the first thing is he's at the top of, and this, you can see the section starting to get a little steeper so he can actually do a proper pump. Notice first of all, generally he's gonna stay pretty compressed, okay? Compressed with the upper body and with the lower body. And what this allows him to do is then extend. And so notice there's this extension with his upper body and his lower body at the same time. So that's where he's gonna create a lot of the energy because the wave isn't giving that energy to him. So on a softer wave where you have to pump, you're creating it by applying pressure with your feet. And there's kind of two things that are gonna be going on here. You're gonna be switching between back foot pressure and front foot pressure, okay? And so you're never, I mean, it's gonna be this, how would I describe it? It's not like hard push back foot and then hard push front foot, but you're like sliding the energy. So you're going from back foot and then to front foot, all right? And then a similar thing is gonna happen with the upper body where you're gonna go from compressed to extended. And then with the upper body, you're gonna be rotating. So you'll notice how his back arm starts forward and his front arm starts backward and then begins to rotate in the opposite direction where he swings that back arm back and then the front arm, okay, now notice, goes forward. So there's kind of like 3 things that are going on there at the same time. And getting that technique dialed is obviously something that takes practice, but hopefully this breakdown is gonna help you understand it. So let's take a look at in all of this in a little bit more detail. So first let's focus on his body, his lower body, right? So he's at this point, what he's doing is he's applying a little bit of back foot pressure, okay, and on his heel. Because what he wants to do is, because before going into it, all right, his board is kind of faced this way, right? But you can see the little steepness of the wave here. So he actually wants to drive back down the wave and use gravity and momentum to generate that speed. So he's gonna begin to push with that back foot on the heel. Okay, just pay attention to his back foot and notice, okay, that he's pushing it a little bit. And what that does is it redirects the board down the wave now, okay? And then what he's gonna do now is he's gonna apply that weight to the front foot. And so notice now his board drives down the wave. So his front foot goes from compressed to then extending, right? And as he's doing this, he's applying pressure on that heel side rail, okay? And so he pushed with the front foot, and then as he ends and he begins to scoop the board up, he's applying that back foot pressure. And so notice how his back leg gets extended, okay? And then notice how he compresses on that back foot, no, the front foot. Now he's not really compressing, it's more like he's lifting that leg. And what that allows him to do is now the board can shoot up, right? And so he does that multiple times. So notice it goes in the pressure goes from the toe side rail. Okay, so now it's toe side rail, and then it's going to be back foot heel side pressure. Right, and so it's kind of like just doing like a mini bottom turn to mini top turn. You can think about it like that, and you're just doing these really short swoops. And the other thing I want to point out is that there are these little arcs that are happening, right? So it's happening along a vertical plane, but it's also going along a horizontal plane. And really what happens is you're kind of zigzagging up and down the wave across both the vertical and the horizontal planes. All right, so that's what's going on with his feet. Now pay attention to what's going on with his upper body, okay? So I mentioned this before, but notice how forward he is. And so, you know, your upper body is fairly heavy, right? And so because he's crouched over like this, this allows him to put a lot more pressure on that front foot. And by driving that back arm forward as well, this is going to give him momentum going forward and then down. And with that back arm, it's back. But notice what's going to happen is he's going to rotate with the upper body. And so he swings that back arm back and drives that back arm forward. And it's kind of like this swinging motion, right? And that's going to facilitate and help him with torquing the board back up the wave face. And then notice also how he times these pumps, right? So as the wave here is a little steeper and he's a little further out from the section that he wants to hit, he's kind of going in bigger pumps. But then as he gets closer, okay, and he's eyeing up the section, he has to be a little more precise. So he's doing these little faster mini pumps and then goes up and does that ridiculous air. So if you thought this was useful, go ahead and give us a subscribe or follow and give us a like, and I'll see you around.